She's cooking for Krishna and his millions of coward boyfriends. So her maidservants will smile and say to her, "Isn't it interesting? You're standing in front of thousands of fires now, and we don't even have to fan you because you're feeling so cool because you're serving Krishna. Whereas when you've left just for a couple of minutes after you and Krishna did the pastime at Surya Kunj, and Krishna's going back to play with his friends, and you're going home, you feel so much separation that you get on fire, and you begin to faint, and you faint. And so we lie you down on a bed of very cooling lotus petals, and we put camphor all over your body. But what happens a moment later is that the camphor turns to hot dust, and the cooling lotus petals turn to hot dust. But here you are in front of all the flames, and now you're so cool. So when will I be on that party?" Basanti's telling me I need to come to an end. So then we go on, and when will I feed you all kinds of delicious dishes? And then while you're eating, when will I fan you and light fragrant incense? I'm just coming to an end. Then, in the purport, we're just going to take a moment's intermission so that Shyam Prabhu can read something that he promised to look up yesterday about how the Majjhima Adhikari needs Uttama Adhikari association in order to advance. Can you speak very loudly?
Yeah, just that paragraph where it is.
Yeah, can you come here so you can be on TV?
Everyone needs a 5 minutes thing.
While he's walking, I'd like to say that I'm honored to be in the room with all everybody.
Me too, I'm an honor.
We're hearing the most extraordinary, the most sweetest topics that are in the whole entire universe. I mean, our fortune is unlimited.
Well, unfortunately, I'm that third-class preacher who's just making a combination with thousands of syllables.
Why are you
So
making us
therefore,
listen to offenses?
So therefore, at the beginning of class, we all prayed so that Gurudev and Prabhupada and their Guru Parampara will make everything happen. Yes.
Okay, it should be understood that in Majjhima Adhikari, a second-class devotee is fully convinced of Krishna consciousness, but cannot support his convictions with sastric reference. A neophyte may fall down by associating with non-devotees because he is not firmly convinced and strongly situated. The second-class devotee, even though he cannot support his position with sastric reference, can gradually become a first-class devotee by studying the sastras and associating with a first-class devotee. However, if the second-class devotee does not advance himself by associating with a first-class devotee, he makes no progress. There is no possibility that a first-class devotee will fall down even though he may mix with non-devotees to preach. Conviction and faith gradually increase to make one an Uttam Adhikari, a first-class devotee.
Thank you, Shyam.
What number?
He gave his other one.
Who's asking?
In that regard, as part of the intermission, I'm just going to read the back cover of this book, Solar Book Distribution. And at the same time, since this is the commercial intermission, I'm going to beg, falling at your feet with a straw in my teeth, everyone who's here for the first time who didn't get this Solar Book Distribution, to please get it tonight for any donation, even if you don't have one. So I'm just reading this, Gurudev is saying here in a letter to one of his preachers, "My contribution to the present and future generation of devotees is largely embodied in the books that I am writing and translating. They are my legacy. That's why we want Gurudev to be all-pervading by getting his books everywhere. we should always remember that transcendental knowledge of the Vedas must be accompanied by association with self-realized souls. So Shampoo reminded me of that. So back to our show. Where are we? Food. Prasadam. No, not that prasadam. Although you can serve it if you like at the same time. Then it'll be popcorn at the movies. So Raghunath Das Goswami is praying to Srimati Radhika, when will I serve you all these kinds of foods? So then in the purport, Srila Gurudev said that prasadam is non-different from Radha and Krishna and their pastimes. And he gives an elaborate purport how Srimati Radhika is taking prasadam with her sakis and saying that this prasadam makes me feel just like I'm with Krishna, and it's more than being with him. It defeats meeting and separation. And by taking this prasadam, I lose all my fear that I would normally have by fear of what people will say, fear of running out of the house. So that's the power of prasadam. Then in the purport, in Gurudev saying that prasadam is not different from Krishna, he gave this really beautiful prayer to Krishna that he applied to prasadam, which is, I hope I can remember it, Prema danchame, Kama danchame, Veda danchame, Vaiva danchame, Jiva danchame, Jiva danchame, Daiva danchame, Daiva naparam. It's Gurudev's tune. Because he was giving the Vilapkas Manjali classes. This is just a perverted reflection of that. And the meaning is, O Mahaprasad, you can give prema bhakti. Not only that, but you can give kamatmika bhakti, the love of the gopis. You give all the knowledge of the Vedas. You are my wealth. You are my life, and you are the life of my life. You are my worshipful Lord, and I have no other worshipful Lord but you. That doesn't mean that carrot cake is my worshipful Lord. It means understanding the identity of prasadam. And Gurudev said how to serve prasadam. Like he said, I've never eaten anything in my life. Then somebody asked me, well, how do you live then? He said, because I honor and serve prasadam. I'm not eaten. So he said, what does serve mean? By praying Mahaprasade Govinde. O Mahaprasad, you are not different from Radha and Govinda and all their pastimes. You are not different, Vaishnave. Nam, you are not different from Nam and all the powers of Hari Nam. You are not different from all the Vaishnavas. And therefore, you can give me whatever they can give me. You can give me Prema Bhakti and Braj Bhakti and Kamatmika Bhakti, and you can take away all the things that they can take away. You can take away all my anarthas and material desires and anxieties. So Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is praying to enter into the pastimes and serve that level of serving Mahaprasad. Then he's also uttering some prayers to, it's getting really late, I guess we'll end here. But I just did want to say one thing. Next year we can talk about more. That it's so important that we establish, as Prabhupada and Gurudev wanted to establish, they're saying, that we establish the Tattva Siddhanta of Krishna consciousness and the Tattva Siddhanta of Radha and Krishna, who they actually are, and how Krishna never takes pleasure in the material energy, and how Srimati Radhika is his Parashakti, his Ladini Shakti, who manifests the entire spiritual realm, which includes Sambit, Sandini, and Hladini, all the spiritual abodes of Krishna and all of his incarnations are manifest by Krishna's inconceivable, all-accommodating potency, who is personified as Srimati Radhika, and who manifests all the living entities, who are a sample of her spiritual energy as Tatastha Shakti, and who manifests as one of the aspects of that part of Shakti as Bahiranga Shakti, or all this entire cosmic manifestation of innumerable universes. So Srila Prabhupada says in his lectures, Srila Gurudev says in his lectures, and in their books, that's why first it's important to understand the first 9 cantos first before we can actually understand. Not that we don't read the Krishna book, not that we don't hear this, but to really understand it, we need very special mercy and to be situated in Tattva Siddhanta. Once on Param Gurudev's appearance day in Singapore, Srila Gurudev asked us one after another to speak in his glory. So after I spoke, it was some Siddhanta that he was proving to defeat somebody else who was giving up a Siddhanta. Gurudev said, you'll all have to know Siddhanta. If not in this life, then in millions of lives from now. But you can't pass that, he said, to go to enter into Rasa Leela. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that there was this disgusting, disgraceful, so-called documentary that became famous around the world, in America and in Europe, what to speak of India, called Love in India, which their whole premise is that the reason for all the suffering in India is because of the repression in education and the repression of sex life. And how dare the government do that, because our God Krishna is the God of love, and he also runs around with a bunch of ladies and steals other people's wives. And they were saying all kinds of abominable, disgraceful things about Krishna in the most offensive way that I'm not going to repeat. So what do I have to do with all that? They used our paintings in there. They showed pictures of lots of Krishna art, and they're using our paintings. And so we're using this as a great opportunity to sue them for millions of dollars. And you know, Manju's here. So that's why my mind is on that. So it's our duty then to establish the real pristine glory of Radha and Krishna, who they really are, so that people aren't fooled by the, it's so all over the place, Sahajiism and Mayavadism. So it's our duties for our Shiksha and Diksha Guru to establish the truth of them that they gave in their books. In fact, in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in Prabhupada's translation, it talks about how after the Rasa Leela, Radha and Krishna and the gopis were going to get refreshment by bathing in the Jamuna, and Krishna was just like a mad elephant going into the Jamuna with his female elephants, and he was smashing all the big plants and creepers because he was an intoxicated mad elephant. So similarly, Krishna was trampling and smashing, in other words, transgressing Ved Dharma, or the principles of mundane morality and the Vedic conception of chastity on a mundane level. So then Srila Prabhupada is explaining that anybody who tries to imitate Krishna, because you know, Sukadeva Goswami, in explaining all these pastimes, he explains, and so therefore Prabhupada does in his translation, that anybody who thinks that Krishna is an ordinary person like themselves, and thus try to imitate, like this movie did, they get the same result as imitating Lord Shiva, who can drink the ocean of poison, and who smokes ganja. They also get the same result by smoking their ganja as if they drank an ocean of poison. In other words, they die and go to hell. So then, Srila Gurudev, back in the 90s, and I just came across this, I heard him when he said it in person, but then I'd forgotten about it over these years, and I just heard it recently. He said that he quoted the same verse and same purport in the 10th canto, and then he said, these people are punishable by all. They're punishable in hell, they're punishable by the police, and they're punishable by the courts, and they're punishable by society. So I thought, oh yeah, perfect. Perfect timing. So is Visanti still here? If not, I can sneak one more verse of Vilapas Manjali, verse 50, around 52. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is praying, when will I be able to make your pastime bed of flowers so that you can take rest after you've had your joking talks with your sakis, and now you're tired and you're ready to take rest. When will I, so that you'll dream about Krishna, when will I make that bed of lotus flowers for you? So as Srila Gurudev was explaining the meanings, he was giving different, it's called narmala, or joking discussions in a joking way about the pastimes. They would remember the pastimes together. So one pastime that they were remembering was that Krishna's thinking that somehow or other my pastimes with Srimati Radhika are not giving me or her lately the highest pleasure that they can give us, because she's being very submissive. And Srila Gurudev said this is one of the innumerable pastimes that's going on in this picture. In fact, Srila Gurudev told me this is not a picture, it's reality. So Krishna's thinking that way. So he decides that he needs to do something to bring back her dakshin or unsubmissive mood. So he comes late, number one, for their meeting. And on top of that, he says to her, "Oh my dear Chandra," and then he pretends that he made the mistake of starting to say Chandravali, but then realized he made the mistake, so he stopped at Chandra and then waited a moment and then said Anani. So, "Oh my dear Chandra, Anani." So then she went like that. She said, "Okay, that does it. You can just go right back to her. I'm not having anything to do with you. It's over." And so Lalita and Vishaka are trying to convince her that it was just a second delay. Even when he's with another gopi, he can't think of anybody but you. What to speak of when he's with you? How would he think of any other gopi? So please give him a chance. Chandranini is a name of could be a name of Radharani, which means your face is as beautiful as many moons. So he said, all right, I will forgive him, but he'll have to paint my feet and render services, which is exactly what Krishna wanted. So that's one thing that's going on here. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, loud.
My question is that we hear so many of these pastimes and they're given by the acharyas just as they are reality. And so, for me, like sometimes, like Gurudev also gives many conceptions that we should try to realize. But when we're chanting or chanting Gayatri and meditating on them, still if we're being strict to what Gurudev has said, still like images of material impressions like fill in for that. Like if we hear, for example, that Krishna is Jamuna Tatachara, he's on the bank of the Jamuna, then I have a material impression of a river that I've seen somewhere, and that comes in my mind. And even my conception of Krishna and the trees, everything is based on my material impressions. So how can I have strong faith that that will have effect, even though my material impressions are filling in?
Okay. So tell me if I'm right. You're asking is, we're trying to follow Srila Gurudev's instructions and conceptions of what he wants us to do to change our identity to who we really are instead of this body and mind. So in our attempt, because we're still conditioned, whenever we remember anything about what we've heard, we remember it the way we've experienced it in the material world. Is that part of the process? If we still keep doing that, if we do that because that's all we can do, will we eventually come to the next stage? Is that your question?
Yeah, how can I be confident that that will
How can I be confident that doing it that way, which is the only way I can do it, will come to the next stage? Okay. So, the GBC devotees also asked that about imagination, that when we do it, we imagine. So Gurudev said, at your stage, you can only imagine now. But that imagination is bona fide in the sense that you're imagining from what you've heard and not something that you've made up or heard from a bogus source. So we're imagining, and at the same time, we're praying for the reality. There's so many songs that we sing in our songbook. When will my identity change? When will all my offenses ceasing? Taste for the holy name increasing. And as I'm imagining in my material way, I'm praying that it can become the real thing. So that's endeavoring and at the same time praying for the mercy, the two. So Gurudev said that is bona fide. And then when, because by the ascending process, we can't do it. It only comes by the descending process, which a shadow of it comes in our Shakti, but the real thing descends, and not even the real thing, it's looking at the thing in a glass Elmira, comes at Bhava Bhakti. But that's when what it really looks like comes. So, very good, thank you. I appreciate that you brought that up. Yes?
Also, one type of deity is a mental deity. So, him conjuring up this image of Radha and Krishna on the river and wanting to serve him there, this is like a mental deity. So,
and still we're seeing the deity as brass. So we're worshiping that mental deity, and we're not yet purified yet. When I first met Srila Gurudev, where's Vasanti? When I first met Srila Gurudev, I told him that I'm going around the world and preaching for Prabhupada, and I have intellectual knowledge of what I'm saying, in the sense that I'm combining syllables, and intellectually I get what I'm saying, because I have my material things that I'm thinking about as I'm speaking. But I have no realized or experiential knowledge. So I expected him to say that intellectual knowledge is not everything. But instead he said, intellectual knowledge is no knowledge. Just like if I hear about Radha and Krishna walking in the forest, and I think, got it. I used to have a girlfriend or boyfriend, and we used to walk through the forest like that. I can imagine what that's like. So he said, that's like if I tell you, even though I know out of realization, because I've tasted it, what is a rasagula? And I tell you, even though I'm realized, but I'm telling you, and if you can imagine that you've never had a rasagula, and I say that it's about the size of a ping pong ball. It explodes in the mouth. It drips down the sides of the mouth. It's like a combination of a honey and an apple, and it has the consistency of a sponge. Will you know what a rasgulla is until you've tasted it, just by the connections? So it's normal, so it's good. So that was the end, and thank you very much for your association. It was very purifying for me, and I look forward to see you soon, either in India or Alachua or somewhere soon. For Premanandi, Kirtan. Rubana Guruvar, Kijaya, Sanatan Bhadranath, Shijiva Gopala Bhattadas, Raghunath Sadhya, Swami Prabhu Kijaya, Prem Se Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasati Gaur Bhakti Kijaya, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop, Gopi Govardhan, Radha Sambhavananda, Shri Vajmanu Utthana Kijaya, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Kijaya, Samadhita Bhakti Vrinda Kijaya, Gaur Premanandi, Om Vrindai, Tulsideva, Jai Shivashita, Krishna Bhakti Vrindi, Satyavacharya Mama, Panchanavatya Vyasya, Kripasindhu Devata. I hope this isn't bad news, but the art CD only works on a PC, not on a Mac. I hope you guys have PCs.
What about I have like the PC or the Windows boot camp. I can watch it on that. It's the same thing. Okay.
I'll put it on YouTube so you can watch it.
Oh, great. Watch it. No,
It's a powerful. I can convert it.
Oh, sorry.
You can? You can convert it to Mac?
No, I can convert it
To YouTube. So it's just a continual presentation.
Oh, okay.
Just play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Automatic slideshow.
Syamarani, do you want a big picture? I'm sorry.
Lisa, do a picture. Well, as many people as we can get into the picture. And who would like to take? Yeah, okay.
Alright, ball, group picture. Well.
Are these book holders? And these two book holders? Are the two book holders? Okay, so fold up this.
Alright, ball.
It's only ladies. Alright, ball.
No, everybody.
I'm saying, right now it's only ladies. So it's changing.
Oh, you put them on top of the cooler? Oh, okay.
Picture.
Yeah, get in it. Are we all in it? Are you in it? Hare Krishna, Hare.
3, 2, 1.
Take another one, just in case. One more.
3, 2, 1. Hold on, someone's coming out of that. They can be in the picture.
Yeah, they want to be
Get in the picture. 3, 2, 1.
And now he has to take a
All
picture.
right, I'll take you. Get in the picture. One more, because he wants to be in it. Is everybody in it? All right, get in it quickly, quickly. All right,
Are we in there?
yeah, you are. You're in it.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know anything about you. Syamarani know anything about this? Yeah, she does. Not, no, what's the second one? I mean the last one. Sorry, is it this one? Do you know how to...
Oh, just to make an announcement about the art CD, there's a Prabhupada button and a Gurudev button. And when